It is 8:51 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the 12th day of September 2025, and this is episode 1167 of Bitcoin. And the United States government is going to pull the Patriot Act on us. So, yeah, be prepared for that when we get to it. You're here because it's all the news that you can use about Bitcoin and more. It's where you come when you want to find out, hey, what the hell's going on today in Bitcoin and beyond. And beyond, we're talking about the end of paper Bitcoin summer. Will it be? We still have like, I think we got to get through, I think September the 21st or September the 20th, something like that, will be the first day of fall. We just need to get there. And speaking of get there, Hines got there. Tether is launching a new coin, and Hines apparently is going to be at the head of it. And then we're going to move on to Africa. We're going to talk about chipper cash is what that's going to be. And then I need to touch back on Nepal and the Nepalese protesters and their embrace of Bitchat. I've actually got a couple of stories about that, and one of them is from Forbes, which I find rather interesting. And then Asset Entities has merged with Strive. If you don't know what either one of those are, you will by the end of the show. And at the end of the show, you will also get a little rundown on the Bitcoin hash rate and the Bitcoin hash, the mining difficulty. Both have hit records, as has, the miner supply of Bitcoin has spiked. It's not really hit an all-time high, but it seems that there may be a slowing of the selling out of Bitcoin miners. But first, the Patriot Act, which is anything but patriotic. You know, when the United States government involves itself in marketing and marketing language in their bill structures, which they've done forever. I'm sorry, it's not really new, but the more I see it, the more I realize just how awful it is to have Madison Avenue and the United States government teaming up together. It's almost like Nazi Germany and the way that they did their propaganda. It's sickening. But this is out of Atlas 21. U.S. government ready to apply the Patriot Act to Bitcoin and the rest of the digital asset field. According to The Rage, this week marks a pivotal moment for the digital asset sector in the United States, with the government preparing to apply the Patriot Act, of all things, to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Last week brought positive developments on reforms to the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970. Worrying news now emerges regarding the privacy of Bitcoin and crypto transactions. The Patriot Act, enacted after September the 11th, 2001, under the Bush administration, grants the United States government extraordinary powers to bypass constitutional protections. Let me read that again. The Patriot Act allows the U.S. government to bypass constitutional protections in the event of terrorist threats, which is why everything is always a terrorist threat. Terrorist financing, terrorist this and that, terrorist other things. It's either about the children or it's about the terrorist. Which Christmas paper do you want your bullshit gift wrapped in? Anyway, these powers include warrantless surveillance, as well as the suspension of the right to a fair trial. According to reports, FinCEN Director Andrea Gacki confirmed that the Treasury is working to finalize the so-called mixer rule. This regulation aims to ban nearly all privacy mechanisms on public blockchains for United States citizens. During the hearing, Representative Liccardo stated, quote, "We are seeing more and more illegal transactions being done in crypto," citing a study showing that 91% of 111 fraud cases examined involved decentralized finance. The main concern is the pseudonymity of transactions. Gacki responded that FinCEN is collaborating with blockchain analytics firms like, I guess, Glassnode to de-anonymize pseudonymous transactions, but Liccardo countered that software like mixers could allow users to evade even the most sophisticated detection techniques. Contrary to its name, the Treasury's mixer rule is not limited to mixers only, but represents a generalized ban on any software or behavior that provides transactional privacy to users of public blockchains such as Bitcoin. The rule would consider the following activities a primary concern for money laundering. 1. Pooling or aggregating crypto from multiple people, wallets, or accounts. That's quite broad. 2. Using computer code to coordinate or manipulate the structure of transactions. 3. Splitting Bitcoin to transmit it across independent transactions. 4. Creating disposable wallets, addresses, or accounts. Now, I'm pausing right there. That's the way Bitcoin actually works. This is ridiculous. 5. Exchanging between different types of cryptocurrencies. And 6. Facilitating delays in transactional activity. This shit's got to stop right now. This shit has to stop right now. Saying it again. This shit has to stop right now. This is absolutely beyond the pale. This is not a free society. These are not free people. This is not the way that we act as American citizenry. This has to stop. If we allow this to happen, all is lost. Continuing, these provisions could also put Bitcoin users employing common privacy practices under suspicion, potentially leading to criminal liability similar to traditional finance smurfing, which is the breaking up of large sums of money into smaller transactions to evade banking controls, which is a federal offense punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So I got to go to prison because I'm just doing transactions? Is that it? Because I'm automatically considered a criminal? Is this the way that a civilized society treats its citizenry? No, it's not. If you wanted the answer to that question, it's actually not. Parallel to FinCEN's work, the Special Measures to Fight Modern Threats Act, previously considered stalled in Congress, has been reintroduced. Oh, yay. Representative Zach Nunn confirmed that the bill is still under debate. According to The Rage, the Special Measures to Fight Modern Threats Act, originally introduced in 2022 by Representative Hines of Connecticut, would effectively give the Treasury the power to prohibit any transaction deemed concerning without public notice nor consultation. They won't even have to take commentary on this shit. As highlighted by The Rage contributor Nicholas Anthony, who has written for the Cato Institute, quote, one likely scenario is that the Treasury would use this authority to prohibit U.S. banks from being involved with cryptocurrency transactions validated by miners located outside of the United States. End quote. Jerry Brito and Peter Van Valkenburg of Coin Center described this approach as dangerously authoritarian, noting that all cryptocurrencies are inherently global and therefore any Bitcoin transaction could plausibly be linked to a foreign jurisdiction. This is bullshit. Everything about this is everything that the founding fathers of the United States would abhor. And anybody involved in its even mere utterance on the floor of the United States Congress, you know, there could be it actually occurred that there was a duel on the floor of the it was either the Senate, I think it was the House of Representatives, but it was in Congress between two Congress people. It was it was an actual duel, not with guns. It was more like with swords, but it happened because the people were vehemently defending the people of the United States. Yet Hamilton was, I think it was Hamilton that wanted the central bank, and Jackson was vehemently opposed to the central bank and actually said, hey, man, the second bank of the United States, it's going down. I'm going to destroy it. And they tried to destroy Jackson for it, and it didn't work. At least back in the day, there were people that would defend the citizenry of the United States. And now all we have is some of the most evil, vile, scum-sucking, malevolent pieces of shit that has ever come down the pipe. Are there a few good people up there? Yeah, there are. but they are outnumbered and they are outgunned. I don't even know how to circumvent this at this point, because we can't run. We can't just move to another country. We have to fight. Otherwise, really all is lost. But this thing, if Trump doesn't get a hold of this right now, then he's lost the midterm elections, because it was the Bitcoiners that got him in, and it will be the Bitcoiners that can throw his ass out. Now, not him, but anybody who is for him, or anybody who's working for him. If we got them all in there, and if they don't do anything about this, then they're going to lose midterms. They just are. Will it be, however, the end of paper Bitcoin summer? Joaquin Book from Bitcoin Magazine has something to say about it. As summer now turns to fall in the Northern Hemisphere, the stonk coiner dream of Bitcoinizing finance is, rapidly becoming a nightmare. The Bitcoin paper summer of issuing shares of clueless financial markets at extreme overvaluations to thereby buy Bitcoin on the cheap is ending, not with a bang of success, but with a pretty unimpressive whimper. The Bitcoin treasury dream was nice. I even openly admit that it made some sense. For a few months, Wall Street merrily entertained the froth and fueled the fires, but at last, the financial gravity is reasserting itself. We're all waking up from our summer fling with financial delusion, where things traded for more than what they're objectively worth. It's both wonderful and tragic to see standard corporate finance once more hold firm. And earlier this year, our own David Bailey, CEO of BTC Incorporated, the owner of Bitcoin Magazine, told Bitcoin for Corporations, another arm of BTC Inc., that, quote, "If you can sell $1 for more than $1, you do that trade all day long," quote, end quote. It turns out that free lunch strategy wasn't free. Wiping out investor money in the process has been a painful journey in learning that lesson. When you, the retail bag holder, are buying a security instead of real Bitcoin, you're typically doing so at a premium, like an MNAV above 1. Perversely, this is both verifiably insane, why buy $1 for more than $1, and the very force that animates these Bitcoin treasury companies. Those of us looking at this with justifiable criticism presume that the MNAVs would come down to roughly 1 via shares falling or staying flat while Bitcoin's fiat price rose. Why did they put 1 in there? That would come down to 1 via shares fall. I don't know. That's a bad sentence, guys. Fate played a trick on us by crashing the Bitcoin price instead. In consequence, quite a lot of these airy financial alchemy monstrosities fell by much greater multiples. Bailey's own NACA, N-A-K-A, for which Bitcoin Magazine provides certain marketing services, has been the most amusing, and for many people around these parts, financially tragic. When NACA announced a major $5 billion program of share issuance last month, the stock collapsed downward some 30% on the news and kept tumbling thereafter, down a neat 70% from its initial pump around the announcement of reverse merging with Kindly MD. NACA has fallen a whopping 85% from its highest point in May, recently setting new lows at $3.28. Quote, "The market price tells you whether you're right or wrong," said Moshe Shin, managing director of APAC Wintermute Trading, on day one of the recently concluded Bitcoin Asia in Hong Kong. I guess that tells us enough about the dubious prospects of Nakamoto and other Bitcoin treasury companies. The recurring pump and dump effect of issuing more shares for a Bitcoin treasury strategy no longer comes with a great pump to the share price. It falls, as sanity and traditional corporate finance would suggest. It doesn't matter how many thousands of coins Saylor's strategy is eating, the price of MSTR keeps falling, having returned the sum total of 0% to common shareholders since November of last year. Metaplanet, having recently passed 20,000 coins in hyped-up celebrations, has seen its stock fall all the way back to levels not seen before the paper Bitcoin summer kicked off. In a recent article chronicling the treasury phenomenon, Nikau Asghari from the Financial Times remarked sourly that, quote, the crypto buying strategy largely relies on issuing shares or raising debt to buy Bitcoin and other tokens, hoping that this fuels share price growth. Understanding the point, she continues, quote, raising capital becomes harder to do as company valuations fall, however, end quote. When the share price falls and the MNAV compresses towards 1, the free money magic goes away. We'll find out if the hundreds of treasury companies out there have any viability once the magic money printing era is over. Yeah, there you go. Even Tyler Evans of UTXO Management, another BTC incorporated and Nakamoto involved company, confessed as much to Asghari in the same Financial Times article. The market, well, it got irrationally overheated, and that the paper Bitcoin summer was the peak for both hype and for the number of companies launching. At the tail end of paper Bitcoin summer, we see reality reasserting itself, dramatically recovering from the collective delusion that market prices on the world's most liquid markets could veer so far off of MNAV course. Here's a bold prediction. In 1 year's time, Bitcoin treasury companies won't be a thing. Most of the lower tiered ones won't survive and will instead spit out the coins they so gluttonlessly and recklessly gobbled up. The ones with serious moat and competent management teams like Strategy or Metaplanet will survive, but see their MNAV shrink to a sliver above zero where they logically belong. The paper Bitcoin summer has ended, and I, for one, couldn't be more excited to see these nightmares go back to the ethereal dreamland from whence they came. Sorry, having a little bit of difficulty this morning. He's right, and I've been saying this for a while. The smaller companies are going to choke out. It's just not viable. And I'm going to cover yet another story about this crap later on in the show. But for now, understand that this guy's right. It's been fun. It's been interesting to watch. But once people actually took up Saylor's playbook, and even I was kind of wondering, Saylor, he did that whole summit thing. He invited all the CFOs and CEOs from these. I think he ended up with 500 companies attending this online summit thing, and nobody made a move. And then all of a sudden, right before this summer happened, it was just a freaking explosion. And all throughout the summer, everybody was just doing what Michael Saylor was doing. You use your existing cash to buy Bitcoin. You put that on your balance sheet, you do a press release, and then you start manufacturing debt instruments to sell to the public so that you can say, we're going to increase your Bitcoin per share. That's essentially the entire playbook in a nutshell. It actually doesn't make sense after a while. I think Strategy has themselves 4 debt instruments for sale expressly to buy Bitcoin. And then they've got their shares of common. I think they have common A and they have common B. So they have 6 different ways to generate cash at the market by selling paper. 6 different ways. And then may I remind you that Michael Saylor promised, he swore up and down that he wasn't going to be selling any more common shares unless the MNAV was above 2.5, but it's compressed well below that. And it really does need to be more around 1 or 1.1 or maybe 1.2. I could almost see it, but who knows? And this gentleman is also correct. Strategy will probably survive. They have a massive treasury chest at this point. Now, the question becomes, in aggregate, how much Bitcoin does all the small companies have? And when the choke point hits, when they barf those coins back up, and they will, what's going to be the effect on price? That's what everybody's question is always going to be. How much in aggregate coins are there? And when they dump, and they will, What's it going to do to the price? But the second question in my mind is, how much of those coins will Sailor be able to swipe up? Because as these companies barf out their coins, the retail is going to barf up their stock. And what are they going to do with the cash that they make? Some of them are going to make boatloads of cash. Some of them are not. I mean, let's be very clear about that. But some of them are, or some of them already have, and they've already bailed out, and they're just waiting. Maybe they're just waiting for the rest of this paper Bitcoin summer to come to its conclusion when they figure out that everything is going to funnel back into Strategy, Metaplanet, Similar Scientific. Who knows? What, maybe even Kindly MD survives all this. I don't think so, but 21 Capital probably will. I mean, they're backed by Tether and Cantor Fitzgerald, so Jack Mallers his company will probably do okay. But I mean, honestly, I really only see 5 viable companies here. Everything else, it's all going to blow away like chaff in the harvest. Now, let's move on to Tether, because they're launching a brand new stablecoin. Yes, if you didn't hear me just now, Tether is launching a brand spanking new stablecoin called USAT stablecoin, and it names ex-Trump advisor Bo Hines the Tether USAT CEO. So it's a whole structure. It's not just a new coin. It's a whole thing by itself. Cointelegraph, Vince Quill is writing. Tether announced a brand spanking new dollar-backed stablecoin and said that former White House crypto advisor Bo Hines will become CEO of Tether USAT. The new stablecoin will be consistent with the reserve requirements and compliance standards of the recently passed Genius stablecoin bill and will use Tether's Hadron real-world asset tokenization platform, according to a Friday announcement. Hadron, like the Hadron Super Collider. Whatever. Stablecoins recently crossed the $270 billion milestone, according to RWA.xyz. Stablecoins have become a geostrategic policy issue for the Trump administration in the United States and is quickly becoming a focus in other countries like China as well. Quote, Tether is already one of the largest holders of U.S. treasuries because we believe deeply in the enduring power of the dollar. USAT is our commitment to ensuring that the dollar not only remains dominant in the digital age, but thrives. And that's all there is to that news story. It's just the announcement that we've got Bo Hines going to be the CEO of USAT. Now, here's the thing. What they're not saying is, how is he a CEO if it's not the case that USAT is going to be its own structured company that is actually separate from Tether, of which Paolo Ardoino is CEO. This is a completely different company, which means it's probably domiciled in the United States as well. Now, this, I'm not shocked, but I am rather kind of surprised that this soon it was that Tether moves into the United States. And of course, and again, I've read a couple of stories that said that they were talking about it, they were going to do it, and I was surprised then as well, because it was my thought that they would keep, that the United States would keep Tether as a way to export United States debt, and they still will, but that they would not be allowed to actually have anything to do with internal stablecoin issuance within the borders of the United States. That one I thought was going to be firmly in the lap of the guys over at Circle. USDC is their United States dollar-backed stablecoin. Since this is going to occur, Tether or USAT is probably going to eat USDC's lunch. So we'll have to see how Circle reacts. I do not imagine that it's going to be pretty. I am certain that they're not happy about this. Moving over to another continent entirely, we have Africa's Chipper Cash adopting Lightning at scale. 50% of Bitcoin transactions are now instant and low cost, according to Nick from Bitcoin Magazine. Chipper Cash, one of Africa's leading fintech companies, announced today that more than 50% of all Bitcoin transactions on its platform now run over Lightning Network. marking one of the most significant real-world deployments of Lightning to date. The company, which serves millions of consumers and businesses across Africa, have been using Lightning through infrastructure provider Voltage to deliver faster, cheaper, and more reliable payments. This achievement well showcases the growing importance of Bitcoin's Lightning Network as a viable everyday payment rail in markets where legacy systems often struggle. Quote, Lightning-enabled payments have the potential to empower and accelerate greater, more reliable financial access across Africa, said Mijad Moulajed, co-founder and president of ChipperCash. Quote, Voltage's reliable infrastructure reduces the complexity of building on Lightning, allowing us to focus at scale. With Voltage, Lightning can truly become the backbone for global real-time payments by delivering near-instant settlement at low cost for people and businesses that need it most, end quote. Founded in 2018, as a peer-to-peer remittance platform, ChipperCash has since evolved into a fully licensed fintech provider offering cross-border payments, virtual cards in partnership with Visa, stock investing, and stablecoin rails. Lightning has quickly become central to that expansion. What began as a weekend discovery by Muljad himself has grown into continent-wide adoption fueled largely by word of mouth. One ChipperCash customer described the Lightning network simply, it's like discovering fire, highlighting the speed and reliability compared to traditional methods. And across much of Africa, financial infrastructure is plagued by outages and delays, according to the company. Even after years of operation, fiat partners continued to experience downtime. Lightning, in contrast, delivers near-instant, always-on payments. For markets accustomed to unreliable systems, well, this represents a leap forward in financial accessibility, pausing to say step function. If it's not a step function improvement in user experience, company experience, everybody's experience, then it will not gain traction. This is what we know about technology. And Lightning Network, according to this, is a step function improvement on the user experience and company experience in payments on the continent of Africa. The whole continent. Continuing, key success metrics from ChipperCash's Lightning rollout include over 50% of Bitcoin transactions are now powered by Lightning. 2, adoption fueled organically through customer referrals. And 3, faster, smoother cross-border and domestic payment experiences. And finally, stronger resilience compared to fiat rails. The integration also enables interoperability with, of course, Strike, Cash App, and other Lightning-powered platforms, broadening Chipper's reach globally. Recently, the company launched Chessa, enabling remittances via crypto rails with instant settlements into over 25 different local fiat currencies. Lightning sits at the core of this offering. Quote, what ChipperCash is doing with Lightning proves that emerging markets can leapfrog outdated payment rails, said Graham Kazix, I can't pronounce it, CEO of Voltage. Quote, with Voltage powering certain parts of their infrastructure, we've unlocked instant, global, and low-cost payments that work every time, everywhere, end quote. By integrating Lightning as part of its payments infrastructure, ChipperCash has positioned itself as a continental leader in Bitcoin adoption. With growing customer demand and support from Voltage, the company is showcasing how African fintechs can leapfrog outdated systems and deliver next-gen financial services today. So Lightning marches on. Let's run the numbers. Well, West Texas Intermediate crude is up almost a full 1.5 to 63.27. Brent North Sea up 1.6 to 67.48. Natural gas is up 1.16. Gasoline is up 1 1/3, and Merbon crude is up 2.15 points to $71.40. Shiny metal rocks are doing well today. Gold is up 1/4 to 36.81 6 dimes. Silver is up 1 1/5. Platinum is up 0.79%. Copper is the only one in the red. It's down 1/4. And palladium is up 1.87%. Ag looks to be fully mixed today. Biggest winner appears to be coffee, 3 points to the upside. Biggest loser is a tie between wheat and rough rice. They're both down 0.86%. Live cattle is down 0.4%, lean hogs down 0.4%, and feeder cattle are down 0.8%. Meanwhile, the Dow is not happy. It is down 1/2. S&P is moving sideways slightly in the red. NASDAQ, however, is up a third, but the S&P mini getting kicked between the legs, 0.87% in the red. Bitcoin is at $115,000. Wow, $300. That is a $2.3 trillion market cap, and we can get 31.5 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,919,735.55 of, and average fees per block are relatively stable at 0.03 BTC, taken in fees on a per block basis. I'm seeing, about 42 blocks carrying 73,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priorities and low priorities, both at 1 sat per VByte. We are still above 1 zettahash. We are exactly at 1.04 zettahashes per second for the hash rate, so you can do with that what you will. A reminder that I have a website. The Bitcoin and Podcast has a website. It is Bitcoin and Show, all one word, bitcoinandshow.com. Go there, sign up, and you will get an email every time that I either release an episode or put up something special like an article or a cathedral episode or something like that. I will do another cathedral episode. I just want to take a little bit more time with this outline than I normally would, because this part is where we get into Bitcoin mining, the production of biochar. How do we get our inputs to make the biochar? How is heat handled? How does all this work? And it's actually a little bit more complicated when I'm trying to describe it to somebody than what it looks like in my head. So bitcoinandshow.com, go over there and sign up. Now, from the last few shows of Bitcoin and, I've got progressively worse with the row of sticks, 11D11, and he says, cheers. And that was from Central Banksy, which was yesterday's episode of Bitcoin and. Also from that same episode, BitGus2 with 5,000 sats. Brother, thank you. World gone crazy, he says. Otis Bitmayer with 5420 says, thanks for this. I appreciate that, Otis. And that was actually from Cathedral 3. So people are still listening to the older Cathedral episodes. That does my heart proud. From Central Banksy, Tulips with 5,000 says, tulips. The funny thing about sending Bitcoin to Mars is that the guy detailing the bridge has a last name that means bridge in Spanish, Puente. It is all tulips, and it is all going to zero. I disagree. From Central Banksy 1776 with 1776 sat says, great episode. Despite the somber mood that has settled across the land, it's hard not to be affected by it. Thanks for bringing us stories that the legacy media is intentionally suppressing, and for calling out their gross embellishments and glaring omissions. Have a great Friday. Yeah, I hear you, pal. Reed with 2100, and that was from Bitcoin for Dark Times, says, Dark Times is a great reason to support value for value. Cheers. And both from Central Banksy, Pies with 421, showing me his guns. And then he says for 121, thank you, sir. No, thank you. BitGus with 5,000 from Bitcoin for Dark Times says boost. And I think that I covered that yesterday. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. Nepalese protesters should permanently embrace Bitchat, as well as Bitcoin and other freedom tech. Everybody's favorite writer from Bitcoin Magazine, Frank Corva, has this one. On Monday, September the 8th, 2025, Nepalese youth began protesting on the streets of Kathmandu in response to the Nepali government's banning 26 major social media platforms on Thursday, September the 4th, 2025. At the height of the protests, The Nepalese protesters began downloading Bitchat, a new app created and developed by Twitter and Block founder Jack Dorsey and open source developer Kali. The app, a censorship-resistant messaging app that harnesses Bluetooth mesh technology, as well as the nostr protocol, and that doesn't even require an internet connection to use, was downloaded almost 49,000 times on September the 8th in Nepal, according to data shared by Kali on X. The lesson here is that apps like Bitchat are not only important tools to use in the wake of the blackout of centralized communication services and during protest, but that they are instrumental in preserving rights that underpin free and open societies. In our modern digital world, we must preserve the freedom to not only communicate online, but also to transact in the digital space. A tool like Bitchat, which currently enables the former, should also soon enable the latter, according to reporting from Forbes, which cited Kali, who voiced his goal of enabling Bitcoin-based eCash transactions via Bitchat in the near future. By embracing tools like Bitchat, Bitcoin, eCash, and nostr, freedom tech staples, the Nepali youth can help to prevent the type of abuse of power that they just protested against. For example, nostr and the various social media clients built on top of it cannot be banned, they cannot be shut off, which means the Nepali government wouldn't have even had the power to take the action that sparked the protests. Freedom tech doesn't just exist to help people fight the battles to get their freedom back. It's there to help them maintain it as well. And that's the end of Frank's very short article here. And yes, I know I talked about the Nepalese youth or the Nepali youth or however you want to pronounce it yesterday, but I think it's worth reiterating. You're talking about a whole group of people that burnt their parliament down, burnt the prime minister's house down, burnt the Supreme Court down. And we're talking to ash. I mean, or at least to hulks of buildings that are basically fully gutted at this point. I mean, a complete devastation of these things. And it wasn't just the prime minister's house. There was a couple of other, I think the home minister's house got burnt down and a couple of other of the ministers' house got burnt down. They were taking politicians and chucking them into the river. I mean, talk about a people who's basically essentially had enough. I mean, I'm looking at Nepal, and I would have never expected this from Nepal. Nepal is generally speaking fairly quiet. They're not really ever in the news. Right now, they certainly aren't in our news because God forbid that the mainstream media in the United States gives anybody any ideas, right? Right. Well, we're not done. Not by a long shot, because this is out of Forbes magazine. That's right, Forbes. And not some kind of offshoot of Forbes. No, actual Forbes.com. Jack Dorsey's Bitchat gains traction during Nepal's unrest. Written by Javier Bastardo, who is a contributor. The Nepali government blocked access to 26 major social media platforms on September the 4th, including Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram. The decision triggered protests in Kathmandu, largely led by young people. I'm pausing to say, I don't think it was just young people that were involved in this. But just 5 days later, on September the 9th, demonstrators stormed and set fire to key government buildings, deposing the administration, as the BBC reported. Meanwhile, an app called Bitchat, which is gaining traction among Bitcoin users because it uses Bluetooth meshes and the nostr protocol to emulate the peer-to-peer nature of Bitcoin, saw a sharp increase in downloads across Nepal with thousands of new users. Bitchat was initially introduced on July the 7th as a weekend project by open source collaborators that included Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Cash App, who developed the iOS version of Bitchat. And then the Android version was built by pseudonymous open source developer called Kali, a Bitcoin-focused technologist who expanded Bitchat's capabilities. Bitchat is a decentralized peer-to-peer messaging app that runs over Bluetooth mesh networks with a hyper-local focus. It's not possible to say how many people in total now routinely use the app, only how many users are online in a specific region at the time. Most importantly, Bitchat requires no names, phone numbers, servers, or even an internet connection. As the Nepali population prepared for a possible nationwide internet blackout following the social media ban, users began recommending Bitchat across platforms like Reddit. One Reddit user on the subreddit Nepal wrote, quote, "No, I don't mean banning some popular chat websites, though I believe that would be enough for an internet blackout for most people. I mean actual internet blackout," end quote. Among the various alternatives circulating online, Bitchat stood out as a promising offline solution. And here is there's a screen grab of a couple of the posts in the subreddit r Nepal. One says, "Download Bitchat fast, please." Another, "Install Bitchat and any other way to communicate when internet is taken down." Another, "Download Bitchat, the decentralized P2P Bluetooth-based chat app." And then yet another, "We need Bluetooth chat ASAP." And finally, some people are saying internet might go down. Let's be prepared. According to Callie on X, the app saw over 48,000 downloads just on September 8th alone from Nepal, which represented more than 38% of total installs at the time. The app now continues to gain traction around the world. The second largest user group so far is in Indonesia, which has its own political strife, representing more than 11,323 downloads. Quote, "Last week, we observed a sudden spike in Bitchat downloads from Indonesia during nationwide protest, but today we're seeing an even bigger spike from Nepal during youth protest over government corruption and, of course, the social media ban. Freedom Tech is for the people. Please share," Callie posted via X on September the 10th. Unlike mainstream chat platforms that depend on servers or, God forbid, centralized networks, Bitchat's hyperlocal Bluetooth mesh approach becomes crucial when those services are either blocked or surveilled. Quote, "In the worst case, it could be the only method for communication that's still available," Callie told me in an email interview, preferring to stay anonymous due to the security risks associated with cypherpunk projects. Quote, "It's similar to Bitcoin in that regard," end quote. Like Bitcoin, Bitchat is built for censorship resistance and accessibility. In times of political unrest or financial repression, tools that bypass centralized platforms become invaluable. Bitcoin allows users to send money without intermediaries. Bitchat enables communication in much the same way, making it useful even when the government tries to restrict or monitor digital exchanges. They represent two varieties of the same approach to technology. Bitchat isn't yet in its final form. In fact, following recent use cases in Indonesia and Nepal, Callie added that developers are working on adding financial capabilities using Bitcoin and eCash. The goal is to use the infrastructure and functionality that the app already has to enable private financial exchanges and even support commerce. Quote, "The direction is also to integrate Bitcoin through Cashew," Callie explained. Cashew is an open source Chaumian eCash protocol for Bitcoin that allows users to send and receive Bitcoin payments in various ways. Callie has been involved with research related to that project since long before Dorsey unveiled the new messaging app. Using Cashew, even an emoji could carry an embedded amount of Bitcoin. After all, Bitcoin transfers primarily require numbers and letters, not centralized payment processing platforms, as long as that message is broadcast to the global network. By combining Bitcoin's censorship resistance with Bitchat's communications infrastructure, the Bitchat experiment not only offers a reliable tool for people in times of unrest, it could also unlock a new wave of private and secure commerce for the 21st century. That's the end of Javier's article. And I wanted to bring that to you, even though many of you who have listened to me, at least over the past month minimum, know about all this. But I find it fascinating to read it out of Forbes without any moral baggage that's coming along with it. the real problem that I find with this article is this continuous use of the Gen Z protest, the youth protests. Yes, there's a lot of young people in these pictures. You know what else I see? People that are not exactly all that young. It's not like the old people, the people that are like 45 and 50 years old are staying in their houses. This is the only narrative that's being carried forward into this article that I find essentially problematic. I'm calling complete bullshit on it, in fact. But after that, this is a pretty clean article that is, again, aside from the use of youth protest, carries no narrative baggage. He's just stating the facts. And the fact that it's coming out of Forbes is, again, fairly surprising for me. But with all that said, I want to take everybody back to the very end of this article, and I want to read this last one. By combining Bitcoin's censorship resistance with Bitchat's communication infrastructure, the Bitchat experiment not only offers a reliable tool for people in times of unrest, it could also unlock a new wave of private and secure commerce for the 21st century. Now, let's look at let's go back to the very first of the show. The Patriot Act, and not even being able to spin up another address. I had the thought that I have to reuse the same address over and over and over again, which is bad OPSEC. It's bad. It's just you don't want to do that. And yet the Patriot Act, if we let this shit go through, is going to be doing exactly that. These two things are a violation of our First Amendment right to free speech in the United States. But the Patriot Act allows it to occur because terrorism, right? And I got that in quotes. It's all about terrorism. It's the terrorists. They're going to kill us all. It's like there's terrorists down my block right now. Look, there's this dude walking down the street, minding his own business, clearly a terrorist. So therefore, I get to lose my right for free speech. So what am I saying? If we start combining Bitcoin inside of chat apps like Bitchat, then we further reinforce the notion of, by the way, Patriot Act or no, the First Amendment should actually trump that. And it actually should anyway, but it would be a reminder to people that I'm able to use Bitcoin inside of something that is clearly protected by the First Amendment in the United States Constitution. Clearly protected. It's the first thing in the Bill of Rights. And if you don't understand how the Bill of Rights works, before any of the people that signed the Constitution of the United States would sign it, they demanded that certain rights be enumerated inside that Constitution. So what they did is they drafted a Bill of Rights, and they said, unless this is attached to this, then we're not signing that. And you can go fuck yourself. And you won't have a union. You won't have a federation of states. We won't get that. We'll have to do something else. And the people that said, they just said, okay. And this is like, you'd probably have to read the Articles of Federation and the Federation letters. There's a couple, there's also the anti-Federation stuff. So there were clearly factions saying, well, we just need the Constitution, but we don't really need to enumerate these rights. And the other faction was saying, bullshit, if you want my signature, you will put these rights in the Constitution. I don't care what the Patriot Act says. The Patriot Act and all acts live and breathe and exist underneath the Constitution. And that Constitution is a contract signed by people who told the other people, we will only sign this if we are guaranteed these 10 rights that we call the Bill of Rights. And the very first one is freedom of speech. We bought a lie in the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is unconstitutional. The act itself The only reason it can come about is because that which is the instructions and protocols which are set forth in the Constitution of the United States. And I've already told you that contract was never going to be signed unless we had freedom of speech. Everything about the Patriot Act is wrong, and we can debate that all day long if we want to, but it's unconstitutional when it comes to stifling freedom of speech. And the second that we put Bitcoin and the ability to transact with each other in a monetary fashion and commit commerce inside a speech app is protected by the First Amendment. Now, it's a little naive. I will admit that. Just saying, well, just because you can put commerce inside of an app that was primarily designed for speech doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'll grant you that, but I'm not going to back down from the argument. I'm certainly not going to back down from the fact that the Patriot Act is clearly a violation of the Constitution of the United States, and everybody that signed their name to it needs to be in prison right now. Like, don't wait. Don't wait for, to pass go. Don't collect $200 go. They need to go straight to jail. Every single one of them. And anybody who signed that is now dead or had a part of drafting that act that is now dead, if they got any accolades or any medals or any honors, they all need to be stripped. They need to basically die a nobody. They need to be stripped. Their names need to be stripped from the rolls of Congress. Their names need to be stripped from the Human Resources Department of the United States. They need to literally, it was like they never existed inside the federal government. That's how bad the Patriot Act is. And any act that would be signed into law that would disable us to commit commerce with each other as free and private citizens of the United States. George W. Bush needs to be stripped of his presidency. I'm fairly conservative. And he was like, quote unquote, a conservative president. He really wasn't. And none of these people really are what they say they are, but be that as it may, he's the one that signed it. And as vice president, they all need to be basically taken off the rolls. Will it happen? Of course not. It's juvenile to even think about, but that's what should happen. The minute that we put Bitcoin inside a Bitchat, whether it's through eCash or Lightning, I don't really care, then we're going to be able to demonstrate that we believe more in the Constitution of the United States around the world than the federal government of the United States does itself. And it's going to make them look like fools, like clowns. And that is exactly how we should continue to make them look. We should make them look unpatriotic. We should bring to light the fact that they are terrorists. We should bring to light the fact that they are not siding with the American people, that they are in fact siding for lack of a better term, organized crime. That's my 2 cents on it. Let's go do this one. Asset Entities, the company, merges with Strive, another company, to build a $1.5 billion Bitcoin treasury. Oh, they're right on. They missed the boat. Dude, haven't you heard? It's the end of paper Bitcoin summer. Asset Entities shares are up this week, for a little while, after shareholders approve the merger with Strive Enterprises. And it will create a $1.5 billion Bitcoin treasury. Asset Entities, which is a social media marketing company, by the way, is completely pivoting into the world of Bitcoin. Pausing to say, is it possible that we can already make the assumption because of this announcement that Asset Entities is a failed social media marketing company? I'll bet you they are. Asset Entities stock saw a whopping 102% rise during regular trading on Tuesday and Wednesday, closing at $8.10, and then went up as much as 14% the next day to $9.25 a share. The excitement, it's so exciting at this point. The excitement comes as investors are buying into the company's plan to raise up to $1.5 billion to buy Bitcoin, which would be around 13,150 BTC at current prices. And that would put the company in the top 10 largest corporate Bitcoin holders in the world. Asset entities previously focused on social media services across Discord, TikTok, and Instagram. But after the merger, the company will be renamed Strive Inc. and keep the ASST ticker symbol on NASDAQ. Matt Cole, currently head of Strive Asset Management, will be chairman and CEO. Arshaya Sarkani, who led asset entities, will be the CMO and on the board of directors. Cole called the shareholder approval a defining moment, adding, quote, "We are uniquely positioned relative to peers to execute our strategy and maximize Bitcoin per share for investors." Jesus, it's the same. It's almost as if they just said, who's got a good mission statement? Who's got the best suit speak about Bitcoin per share? Or Jesus. Really? They couldn't come up with anything other than "we are uniquely positioned relative to peers to execute our strategy and maximize Bitcoin per share for investors." You couldn't come up with anything else. Yet nobody in the room had any kind of imagination whatsoever to differentiate yourself from the crowd other than to say, look, we're different. Why don't I should get paid $250,000 to be sitting in these rooms. Jesus, for the love of. Anyway, the merger is a reverse merger structure, which analysts say is safer than the more speculative SPAC deals that were popular last year. The plan is for $750 million in funding through a private placement and another $750 million if warrants are exercised. Strive will remain debt-free, which Cole says gives the company a long-term advantage. The strategy is not just to hold Bitcoin, but to outperform Bitcoin itself over time. That's your strategy. How? That's not a strategy. That's a goal. Oh my God. This is why paper Bitcoin summer has become so goddamn dangerous. Strive will also be looking to acquire distressed Bitcoin claims. The vultures are circling. They have looked into buying around 75,000 BTC tied to the collapsed Mt. Gox exchange, which would give them exposure to Bitcoin at a discount. A recent filing mentioned this could increase the company's Bitcoin per share ratio, a metric that's becoming more popular with investors. Frickin' ghouls, man. The news has gotten both retail and institutional investors buzzing. Yeah, like vultures. Data showed message volume about asset entities on StockWits went up over 370% in 24 hours. Some even calling for the stock to go to 100 in the short term. Meanwhile, institutional interest in corporate Bitcoin treasuries is on the rise. I don't think so. Public companies now hold over 1 million in Bitcoin, or about 5% of all coins in circulation. Michael Saylor's strategy is the biggest player. Yes, we know. We don't need reminding. Adding Strive to the list shows just how mainstream Bitcoin has become in corporate balance sheets. Shareholder approval was a big hurdle, but the merger is not yet done. The close is still subject to NASDAQ approving the listing for the combined company and other standard regulatory approvals. Gee, I wonder if they will look at the statement where they say that the strategy is to outperform Bitcoin itself, which is not a strategy, it's a goal. And the fact that you can't even use words the way that they're defined would be a big red flag that maybe, just maybe, management of either one of these companies is not really prepared to be approved to merge so that they can buy $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. This entire thing is almost a poster child for everything that's already occurred past the 5 top companies that hold Bitcoin. And I mean like I'm talking about the most Bitcoin held. Those guys were early actors. They were well positioned. They've got good management. They'll probably survive, but 6 through 357 or whatever it is at this point, not going to survive. And this one won't either. Now, will they laugh at if Cole and the other guys in this company hear this podcast and they survive? and they start laughing at me, will I have my feelings hurt? No, I will thank God that they didn't fold, because that means that people didn't lose their jobs. I would like nothing more than to be wrong about this, but this shit's not going to work anymore. It's just not going to work. Let's get under the final one for the day. Bitcoin hash rate difficulty hit record highs as miner supply spikes. Akash Giramath has it for Decrypt. After Bitcoin's recent price surge saw it break a 2-week high amid multi-week record inflows to US spot Bitcoin ETFs, hash rate and difficulty have also hit new all-time highs. Bitcoin's hash rate hit 1.12 billion terahashes per second on September the 12th, per BitInfo charts. The network's difficulty, which is a measure of how computationally hard it is for miners to find a new block on the blockchain, also touched a record high of 136.04 trillion. Hash rate is the total computational power of all miners that secure Bitcoin. The difficulty in finding a block increases once every 216 blocks are mined. Wait a minute. No. Or roughly every 2 weeks, as it increases if the hash rate increases. That's a terrible sentence. Let me reword this for you. The difficulty in finding a block changes once every 2016 blocks are mined, or roughly every 2 weeks. It increases if the hash rate increases, and it decreases if the overall hash rate has decreased, but that's on average. It doesn't just increase. That's editors. Get an editor. The next difficulty adjustment per CoinWares is scheduled on September the 18th, 2025, and the current estimate puts the value up 6.38% to 144.72 trillion. With such a huge spike, Varun Satyam, co-founder of DeFi platform Davos Protocol, told Decrypt that these windows often cause smaller or inefficient miners to scale back, while larger efficient operators hold or even accumulate, positioning for the rally to recover their capital expenditures. With the highly anticipated Federal Reserve rate decision, which is due, listen up, September the 17th, so early next week, and risk on markets prime for a 25 basis point rate cut, investors are bullish, expecting Bitcoin's price to push higher. This outlook coincides with the uptick in miners' reserves, bouncing to a 50-day high of 1.8 million BTC on December the 9th, per CryptoQuant data. Satyam explained that hash rate surges post-halving have historically preceded price rallies. Quote, we may be entering a similar phase now, he said. Bitcoin is primed for a decisive upward move, with altcoins riding shotgun. Sorry, guys, it's part of the article. You know me, I don't like speculation as far as price is concerned, and I sure as shit don't like, oh, it's alt season. Users of prediction market Myriad, launched by Decrypt's parent company Dastan, are more sanguine. While over 80% expect it to hold above 105,000 through September, they're more evenly split on its broader outlook, with just 56% expecting it to top 125 by year end, versus 44% who see it dipping under 105. Bitcoin is currently trading at just under 115,000, up 0.8% on the day and 2.3% for the week. So there you go. There it is. What to say at the end of this as you go into the weekend? It's been a very tough week. It's been an awful week. And it's up to us to make sure that the weekend and the days after this terrible expenditure of negative energy is positive for us and positive for others. Even I snapped at my kids this morning. I freaking lost it. I apologize, and I will apologize to them again, later on, but it's definitely not the way to start school. I'm guilty. I'm just as guilty as everybody else for letting the events of this week affect me. I tried not to. I really did. I thought I'd be able to get to the weekend without any kind of incident, but alas, I have fallen. I'm human, and this week was really, really tough. I'm going to have to put a lot of work in, for over the next, over the next forever, for me, at least until they put me 6 foot under, to do everything that I can to be in a positive mood, to be in a good mood, to exude positive energy. But I'm human. I'm going to fail. And there's just no way about it. If you're feeling like you just got hit by a train this week, that's not your fault. You got hit by a train this week. Whether you like Charlie Kirk or not. And it's not just him. It's what's going on in Nepal and France and the woman on the train. And there's probably 2 or 3 handfuls of shit. I mean, there's crap going down in Indonesia. Like the Keir Starmer every single day puts out some kind of nonsense on X, and he just gets savaged in the comments. And yet it's like watching somebody who just doesn't care about you rub it in your face. And watching actions like the people that were next to that poor woman on the train just get up and leave like it was nothing was going on. Like she was the problem. That's sort of a mirror image of Keir Starmer being just so blind that he would go to X and make statements that are clearly false. I'm doing everything that I can to protect UK. No, you're not. You wouldn't have the problems in the UK if you were actually doing that. You're rubbing it in people's faces at this point. The people in Nepal, they burnt down their parliament. They burnt down their Supreme Court. They were tossing politicians into the river, yet almost like all of our media is almost completely silent about it. Nobody's really talking about what's going on in France. Nobody's really talking about what's going on in Indonesia. I mean, not unless you go look for it. Sure. CNN's got a story right here. All you had to do was search for it. Yeah, that's not how most people get their news about shit. They have to hear about it first. Maybe they hear about it on social media. But chances are good, unless you're on nostr or God forbid X, you're probably not hearing much about any of this. This is where I'm finding out about these things. I would have never, if I was just watching MSNBC or Fox or CNN at the gym, and I do, like, because I we'll get on the treadmill and look at the bank of TVs, and I'll see CNN and Fox News right next to each other, and I have to go home to find out what actually happened. That's what I mean. We're not covering any of this because it is not in their interest to cover any of this. Instead, I get how pissed off Whoopi Goldberg is at RFK for making it more difficult for the people that pay her salary, the pharmaceutical companies, because in the end they do. They're 70% of all the advertising of televised media right now, if not, a whole bunch of other different media. That's how she gets paid. And she's really pissed off at RFK for making it more difficult for them to be able to advertise on television when we are one of only 2 countries on the planet that allow it to occur in the first place. That's the news that I get if I'm expecting news to be delivered to me, expecting important items that are going down during the day to be delivered to me without me actually going, is there something like for instance, should I check on Bangladesh today? Because I haven't heard anything about Bangladesh. Maybe there's something going on in Bangladesh. Should I do that? Do I need to do that for 174 countries? Or however many countries there are in the world right now? I think it's right around 174. Should I do that? No, that's actually ridiculous. That's why we have the news. Hey, this is important. This is going on. And yet the news that we have been delivered for the last, ever since September the 11th, 2001, has been absolutely vapid, vacuous, no substance, no weight, no import, no meaning, no nothing. Instead, for the last 24 years, we've had to depend on others, each other, to tell us what's going on. We've had to disseminate information that we think other people might not know, and we think is actually important. And you know what I've never talked about other than just a couple of minutes ago? Whoopi Goldberg and how she feels about RFK. Why? Because it is not important. It's just not. This week has been tough. I'm actually, God honestly surprised nothing really terrible happened yesterday on September the 11th. I was half expecting it to. I was expecting that we had been softened up by this week's, events, so that we would be able to ingest some horrific thing on September the 11th, 24 years later. I don't know, maybe they'll do it next year on the quarter century anniversary of 9/11. Who knows? But the very thing that came out of 9/11 24 years ago is the very thing that is threatening us again today. That's the Patriot Act. And everybody's imagination and energy needs to be bent into figuring out how do we get rid of this thing. Not just get it to where it's not worried about Bitcoin. That just isn't enough. If we don't kill it, if we don't become, what did I saw something on, I think it was on X yesterday from from Texas Slim. He'd retweeted somebody that I guess had a cut from Yellowstone, and Kevin Costner was telling his son, it's like, you have to kill evil. And the only way that you can kill evil is to become meaner than evil. I really wish it wasn't that way, but he may very well be right, even if it is from a movie. This Patriot Act and the people around it they just need to be forgotten with extreme prejudice, is the only other way that I can say it. We cannot listen to these people. We cannot allow them to bathe in our lives. This is a private bathtub, dude. Get out. My privacy is important. Your privacy is important. And the very creature from the Black Lagoon that arose 24 years ago is still with us. It keeps getting reenacted. It has to stop. How do we do it? See you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.